John Krakauer was born in 1954 in Massachusetts and grew up in Oregon. When he was a child, he discovered a love for nature, mostly for mountains, that led him to become a mountain climber. In 1983, he started to write both as a journalist then as a writer of novels. In 1992, Krakauer discovered by chance the story of Chris McCandless, and he became obsessed about it. Therefore, he wrote a long article on the magazine Outside that collected a huge response by the public. For this reason, the writer decided to retrace Chris' adventures during his 2 years journey searching for his dream. In 1996, it was published Into the Wild, a book that tells the story of Christopher McCandless, a 22-year-old American young man of a wealthy family that, after his graduation at college, decided to donate all the money in his bank account and started a long journey through the United States under the name of Alexander Supertramp. His desire of escape comes not only from his difficult family relationship, but also from the inspiration of authors such as Thoreau, London, and also Kerouac, that with his novel On the Road became a true model for McCandless and the author himself. Chris wants to escape from the civilization and merge into nature. The main goal becomes then Alaska. Unfortunately, since he doesn't have an adequate equipment and also due to the extreme climate conditions he faces there, he's found dead into an abandoned green bus which he calls the Magic Bus. Near him there is a diary in which he narrates his journey, and Krakauer uses it to recreate step by step Chris' route. The author also analyzes the people met by Chris, such as a hippie couple in love with nature and a way of living day by day, a harvester from South Dakota where Chris works for a while, and Ron, an old veteran that will change his view of life thanks to the boys' messages of fraternity and freedom. This book is the result of 3 years of research in which Krakauer tried to discover the reason that led Chris into the search of the absolute peace into an untouched nature. Sean Penn, after reading Krakauer's book, fell in love with Chris' story and decided to make a film about it. At first, his family didn't know if it was appropriate to put on a big screen their son's story, but after 10 years of research, Penn could finally start the production. The director tells with simplicity the story of a young man looking his inner self, without making him a hero or a martyr, but only telling his journey for freedom. Penn uses flashbacks instead of a chronological order to tell the story, and he analyzes his relationship with his family and society. He divides the story into 5 chapters: my own birth, adolescence, manhood, family, getting of wisdom, as if the journey represents a new life. The voice of Chris' sister, Karen, is used to tell the past, and the voice of McCandless to tell the viewers his thought or to quote his favorite writers. The director of photography wanted to focus on the landscape to emphasize the contrast between nature and cities. The soundtrack, composed by Eddie Vedder, perfectly matches the movie atmosphere, and the performance of Emily Hirsch that plays Chris impresses the viewers. Chris' journey represents the voyage that many of us take inside ourselves to find our place in the world. It represents the desire of living in a modern society dominated by the conventions and the canons that are imposed to us. Chris rejects any form of comfort by traveling by foot or hitchhiking, by using money only for the bare necessities, and by the will of leaving behind his own origin, rejecting even his own name. Even if these could seem excessive gestures, they are actually the starting point for a deeper reflection on modern society. Chris is a kind of revolutionary man that presents the idea of escape as a salvation from hypocrisy and the brainwash that contemporary society imposes on every single citizen. The beginning of this journey becomes a ritual that leads to a radical change of the person, that is, yes, external, but mainly a spiritual one for the traveler, that can be described as a proper pursuit of happiness. The author wants to express to the public that during our life we feel the need to constantly move in order to make ourselves feel like new individuals every time. Everything that is good or bad must be accepted for what it is. Life is not about certainties, and people shouldn't think that living in wealth is better. The real freedom is the discovery of our true self, even if it means detaching ourselves far from what society imposes us. However, Chris' journey is not only a critique to society, but a path through life. The nature, wild and untouched, becomes the main way of understanding that happiness can't be found in material things, but in the experiences that we make, and when we unconditionally share those ones with others. Chris chooses the path of loneliness to leave behind everything that oppressed him, but in his solitary journey he eventually surrounds himself with people that will become essential figures and true friends. After spending 5 months in the wilderness of Alaska, Chris reconciles with his tormented soul, with his family and the humanity as a whole. He discovers what it truly means to forgive, but when he eventually decides to come home to share his joy, he mistakenly eats some poisonous berries that kill him. Nonetheless, the fact of facing his death in the middle of the nature that he loves is for him a moment of joy and liberation. In his diary, he writes a key phrase that could be seen as a summary of his whole voyage: "Happiness is only real when shared." This could be seen as the main thought of this story, since us whole as a contemporary man, we are so constantly surrounded and blinded by technology and modernity that in reality we often ignore each other. The public reacted to Chris' adventures in different ways. Some people criticized the irrational decision of the young man, calling him a fool, but even if we could all agree that McCandless didn't have quite the knowledge to start such a big adventure, I think that his journey should not be seen just a courageous challenge, but something deeper. His solitary years of traveling represents indeed the path that each one of us decides to make to discover ourselves, looking for a happiness that detaches from the society we live in. We hope to accept the pure and simple joy of the act of living, embracing everything that happens to us. When we will find this inner peace just as the one that Chris finds in Alaska, then the only thing that is left to do is to share it with others, bringing this kind of happiness in their lives as well.